My name is Howard Brandston. I'm a lighting designer. I've just written a book. It's called Learning to See, A Matter of Light. It's a book for everybody because as well as we can see, there's still a lot to learn. And most learning takes place through your eyes. So you might as well find out how your eye works to engage your brain for knowledge. Now, almost none of you will know me because what I do, lighting design, is not something that attracts attention. However, you will all know some of the work I've done, like the lighting for the Statue of Liberty. Also, the lighting for the Petronas Towers, the world's largest towers in Malaysia. I also did the master plan for the lighting of Battery Park City, the Central Business District of Detroit, and several other projects like that. So there's a lot of people who are wandering around in the light that I've cast around their environments. The title of the book, Learning to See, A Matter of Light. Well, I learned to see, really learned to see well when I was in high school, because there was a great art teacher who I was studying with named Leon Friend. I was a member of his art squad. And what did I do on the art squad? I got the materials ready for each class. You know, whatever Leon was going to do that day, watercolors, oil paints, charcoal, I would get this ready. And one of the things that struck me was when these materials were in front of the students, Leon would lean forward and say, "In front of you is a blank piece of paper. That's the opportunity for a work of art. Let's see what you can do." And that stayed with me. And every time some project comes along, there is an opportunity for a work of art. And I'm going to show what I am going to do. Another thing that influenced me was studying philosophy in college. You had to do a lot of writing. And I went to the guru of writing, a guy named Rudolf Flesch. And in his book, he said, creativity may simply mean not doing something the way it has been always done before. I said, wow, if everything I do has never been done before, it will have been creative. There is enormous emphasis today on energy, global warming, LEEDs, getting these kinds of certifications, and they're all very, very important. At the beginning of the energy crisis, I was picked by the Illuminating Engineering Society to go to Washington to deal with the government. And I went every month. I made my trip to Washington, put on a gray suit and a tie, so I would be proper, in the high and mighty folks of our federal government. And I sat there with many of my colleagues from architecture and engineering, and all I did was criticize what the government was recommending. And I thought, wow, what am I doing here? Is this useful? I'm always saying no and explaining why I don't like what they're doing. Gentlemen from the National Society of the Professional Engineers could see that the men from the federal government were quite upset. And he leaned forward and he said, sir, we may never agree amongst each other on what should be done, except, sir, to disagree with you. And I thought, wow, what I'm doing here is not really productive. So I went back and said, what kind of a real contribution can I make? Sat down and I wrote what became the final version of a mathematical equation that was used to set the upper power limit for lighting in the energy code. And that was adopted in the first code, ASHRAE IES 9075. So that was a positive contribution, finally. If you're going to be creative, you really must have an open mind. If you have any notion about what this project might look like, before you totally understand it, you will prejudice your chance of doing a good job. You have to be open-minded, curious, and skeptical. Just because it's written somewhere or you've seen it before, that does not mean it will relate at all to what you are doing. You've got to start from scratch. There are many, many books written on lighting, illuminating engineering, and they've always been an enigma to me because they don't make the connection between light and life. How do we really view this? What impact does this light have on our lives, and why? And what clues does one use to know how to design what it is you wish to see? Because we all live in a different world. We have different cultures, and this book tries to give an insight into how people who do what I do pick out what they wish to see and how they turn that into something that you will realize and appreciate. Good lighting can only be defined at the beginning of each project with each client, because one shoe doesn't fit everybody, and their needs and wants and expectations differ from what might be written in a generic sense, which is like saying, this, if you design to these rules, it's designed by a committee or designed by a camel. So good lighting can only be defined at the beginning of each project with each new client. And one knows that one has succeeded in fulfilling this client's expectations if at the end of the project they say to you, this looks precisely the way you told me it would. In this book, I say that I've never been hampered by shackles of rules. I believe rules are a substitute for thinking. I got that attitude because I grew up in the theater. I was trained as an artist. There are no rules telling an artist how to work. There are no rules telling theater people how to get the emotion and transfer that emotion to you sitting in the audience. But in lighting design, there are codes. There needs to be codes. There are energy conservation codes. Not all of them really take into consideration human need. And so I've always ignored them. That doesn't mean that I don't know what they are, that I don't know the science. I'm quite technically astute. And I think you can't do this work unless you are. But if you're bound by those, and those are the only goals you have, you will never do outstanding work. And if it's not going to be a work of art, I wouldn't bother with it. This book is a compilation of little anecdotes, sort of how I got to do some of this work. And some of this work, has been influenced by all kinds of people, and all kinds of people helped me with this book. I used as a model the work of Oliver Sacks, who didn't try to relate one chapter to another. He just gave tales, little tales, neurological histories of cases that he worked on. And Oliver has a little snippet in this book to reinforce my attitude. Also in this book is another person who is a big influence on me, a man, Dr. Peter Boyce. Peter is one of the world's experts on human factors in lighting. There's a little insert in the book from Peter Boyce, another one by Dan Champa, and all these people had an impact on how this book was put together. So I would think that with all of these various aspects, looking at all these various components, these projects that I've done, will give you some insight that you can relate to in learning to see for yourself.